Princess Blue, the mystery woman, whose bones were found on a deserted dead-end road.
I remember the tire. I remember her skull being under the tire.
Would this have been a place where someone thought, I could dump a body here?
It'd be a perfect spot because there was nothing out here.
Who was she? There was one clue, a ring.
And that's where she got her name from.
The Bluestone class ring, which would lead detectives down so many different paths. 3 decades passed and no one claimed her. Then we started digging.
I've always wondered why she never come home, and now I know. 'Cause she wasn't here to come home.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
A brother searching for his older sister.
That's Julie.
Oh.
When she was really, really young.
Yeah.
Searching for answers. This is a story that takes us from a safe little Texas town to the shadowy streets of New Orleans.
I said, this is my sister. Have y'all seen her? She's missing.
A story about a missing woman and DNA connecting the dots.
Aha, I've made a direct link between these profiles.
A story about tracking down the people who knew Julie Gwen Davis before she vanished in 1985, only to show up dead on the side of that road 5 years later.
After all these years.
A story of one family's hope and one detective's persistence.
Yeah, I mean, never give up.
This is Unsolved. Princess Blue's bones were found right here. This 4-lane road didn't exist. Neither did those houses or the traffic. People came here to dump things like old tires and mattresses. It was a dead-end road.
I mean, if you can picture a road that very short, quarter of a mile maybe, that just stopped and there was woods in front of you. That's what that would have looked like. Most of that area there was soybean fields, rice fields.
Manvel, a small, quiet town of about 10,000, 25 miles straight south of Houston. But back in 1990, only 3,500 people lived here. And on that hot September day, a man passing through pulled off on that desolate gravel road.
And he stopped there to relieve himself. And his story was that he's a collector of old bottles. And that he seen a bottle that he thought was collectible. So he went to look for it and seen a tire, and underneath the tire was the remains of a person. Scared him, so he left. At that time, they didn't have cell phones. He couldn't call nobody.
The man went home, told his wife about what he saw. Together, they called police. Investigator Matt Wingo, now retired, was one of the first out there.
Something I haven't heard mentioned much, there was a wig there. And, you know, that wig could be important as far as having some pieces of her hair in that wig also.
I've never found any pictures of the scene itself. The ME's office supposedly had some, but I haven't been able to find them. But from what I can picture from reading the reports, I mean, everything was just scattered.
Back then it was barren. It was barren. That's where we found the bodies. That's where the bodies were being found.
Wingo says at the time, bodies of women began turning up on backwoods roads across the county, and he was working many other cases. We're not far from the Texas killing fields, after all, where nearly 30 victims, mostly young girls, have been found murdered. This woman had 2 fractured ribs, but it wasn't clear how she died. Still, the medical examiner concluded it wasn't natural. An autopsy found no drugs in her system. She was between 15 and 19 years old, around 5 feet tall, and she was Hispanic. Police collected a pearl bracelet and 6 rings found by the bones.
What do you think? It just wasn't a big story back then?
Well, back then it was probably one of the things where they've recovered a body that's been there for 9 months to a year. There were no signs of trauma, no cause of death. And it was probably a case that was never going to lead to her anywhere.
16 years passed, and then a new lead, when a curious detective took a second look at the evidence, noticing that brilliant blue stone ring was actually a 1975 class ring from Robert E. Lee High School in Houston. That's what put this cold case back in the news when Princess Blue got her name. Investigators tracked down nearly every Lee High School senior from 75, but found no one with a missing sister or cousin or friend. Investigators went to the company that made the ring, but apparently they didn't keep sales records from that far back.
There was a lot of stuff that went on that ring that maybe some time could have spent other places.
Forensic sketch artists studied Princess Blue's bones and gave her this face. Remember, investigators initially thought she was Hispanic? Well, new DNA analysis from a lab at North Texas State University determined otherwise, that she was probably white with black ancestry and could have been as old as 21 when she died. But 130 miles east in Orange, Texas, Danny Davis hadn't heard about Princess Blue, or the class ring, or bones on the side of the road in Manvel.
Wow, okay, that's not the one I was looking for, though.
He'd spent the last 20 years searching for his missing sister, Julie, who walked out of his life in the 80s.
She cried, she hugged my neck, she said, "I love you, Danny." And that's the last time I saw her.
You remember that day really well.
As clear as yesterday, yeah.
The older sister he'd looked up to, with the strawberry blonde hair and freckles, seemingly vanished when he was in high school. He thought Julie would just eventually come home. But weeks turned into months, turned into years, then decades, nothing. And then one day, Danny got a call from a Texas state trooper.
So this trooper calls you out of the blue.
Yes, ma'am. To be honest, the first thing I thought was there's got to be a mistake.
Danny Davis was around 17 years old when he last saw his sister. Julie Davis was just a year older, but seemed to know what she wanted.
And it didn't involve sticking around here where they grew up, in Orange, Texas. Julie wanted bigger. The day they met was at the Orange House Hotel. Danny remembers Julie bringing along a dark-haired man with a beard. She said they were getting married and living in New Orleans.
Her giving me that last hug, telling me she loved me, she hoped to see me again. And that was the last time I saw her.
And you never dreamed you wouldn't see her again.
I never dreamed I would never see her again. And you think it'd be hard to miss somebody when you ain't seen them in 30 years, but you still miss them. You still miss them. I'm sorry.
It's okay. What do you miss the most about her?
Her being there, man. Her being my sister. Her being my closest sibling. I just miss her being there, you know? I would have loved to turn 51 years old and my sister be there at my birthday, you know? And now I'll never get that chance again.
You guys were only 11 months apart.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of older sister was she? Did you look up to her?
Actually, yeah, because she got me out of a lot of tight jams. She'd back me up if I ever got into, a scuffle with anybody. My sister was there to, 'cause she was brave. She wasn't scared of nobody. Yeah, I really miss her.
Julie was the oldest of 6 children, fiercely independent, fearless, her siblings say. As kids, they helped raise each other. Money was tight, but they got by. Mom, Edna Ray, worked at a nursing home, and Danny Sr. was a union guy, a welder at the nearby shipyard. They were strict parents, and Julie didn't like that, according to Danny. She started running away from home at around 13. It got worse when Edna and Danny Sr. divorced.
She didn't have that family unit, She didn't have to be honest with you, she didn't have the discipline she needed. And I don't want to put a bad light on my sister, but she ran wild. She was her own person. She was a free spirit. She did what she wanted to do. And when they would pick her up, she'd hightail it again like Jack Rabbit. She was gone. But as far as being a lawbreaker or troublemaker, or, you know, she wasn't none of that.
Within 4 years of seeing Julie at the Orange House Hotel, she would be dead. It would be decades before Danny would know it, before anyone would know it. But people here in Orange didn't forget Julie. How could she just vanish?
In 2019, police in Austin started digging into a cold case about a mystery woman found dead on the side of a road. A mystery woman who could have been the missing Julie Gwen Davis, investigators believed. Texas Ranger Chris Rainwater happened to be based near Orange at the time, and he got a call from police 150 miles away asking for a favor.
So initially they said, hey, can you go get the family's DNA so we can try to match this through databases to see if Julie Gwen Davis is the Corona girl.
And you just got this call out of the blue, basically.
Yes, and that happens.
The Corona girl, not Princess Blue. Corona Girl is a different mystery woman, named for the promotional beer t-shirt she was wearing when she was found murdered and dumped in 1989 in Gerald, Texas, a few years after Danny had last seen Julie.
At that point, you didn't know anything about Princess Blue, correct?
Hadn't heard of it.
Not at all.
Nope.
Rainwater tracked down Julie's brother Danny, went to his house, explained police might have a lead on his missing sister, 30 plus years after she disappeared. Rainwater swabbed the mouths of Danny and his brother right there in Danny's living room.
He was obviously very excited to provide his DNA in hopes that they could get some kind of closure because they'd gone all these years without knowing what happened to her.
Yeah, was he shocked? You knock on the door and you're like, hey.
Well, I called him. So I called him and said, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm kind of doing. And yeah, he was a little bit caught off guard, but really receptive because who wouldn't be? You know, it's your sister that you haven't seen.
Oh, me and Roland both gave a sample to the Texas Ranger, and like 9 months later, he called me back and he told me, he said that the sample he took from me didn't match the Corona young lady, but they did have a hit on it.
Inside the State Police Forensics Lab lives the DNA of killers and their victims. Cameras aren't usually allowed in here. The testing and data analyzing done in these rooms solves cases. Science does not lie. This is where Danny's DNA came, waiting among evidence from the most horrific of crimes.
They swabbed his mouth, and you get that swab. What happens next?
So we will get it and it will be properly sealed, which means that it will have evidence tape or some type of sealant.
Forensic scientist Ashley Kibbe extracts DNA by cutting pieces off the swab. Then she uses chemicals, heat, and these machines to break open cells.
I mean, it takes you days to do
Yes,
this.
it does. Yes, it does.
Julie's siblings had waited more than 30 years for answers. A few more weeks was nothing. And this time, Danny had hope. Because more and more cold cases across the country are getting solved. It used to be detectives uploaded DNA data and searched for missing profiles in their law enforcement databases, like CODIS. You may have heard of that one. It stands for Combined DNA Index System. Well, now investigators are turning to genetic genealogists for help. Genealogists find relatives by tracking down distant family members who've voluntarily submitted their DNA to databases like Ancestry.com or 23andMe. That's how investigators started looking into the Corona Girl cold case, by searching for those distant relatives through genealogy websites. As more and more people submit DNA, it's becoming easier to follow a family tree. DNA technology plus genealogy is solving cases.
Like, do you ever have those moments in the lab when you realize, like, this is a really cool thing?
Yes, all the time.
Really?
That's why I do what I do.
Tell me about that. What does that feel like?
It's amazing to connect the dots and to give that answer and to give the relief to someone that is out there that has been waiting for an answer.
Why do you keep this up in your garage?
because that's all I got on her.
Yeah.
Danny got an answer. 9 months after rainwater swamped his mouth, they found Julie. She wasn't the Corona girl. There had been a hit on another unidentified murdered woman in a national missing person database. Julie was Princess Blue.
Did you see that coming?
Not at all. I got an email from the lab saying that this is the profile that she comes back to, and it comes out of Manvel, Texas, and I'm expecting, 2 hours east of there. So yes, it was a shock, but in a good way, because it came back to something.
I got a call out of the blue, says, hey, I think we have your girl identified. I'm like, what? Hold it, back up.
What was it like to pick up the phone and call a detective who had spent so much time, effort, energy working a cold case, and to tell him, hey, I think we have a match. I think we know who Princess Blue is?
You don't get those opportunities very often, so when you do, it's great. It wasn't my news necessarily, but to be the one to call and say, hey, I think we've got this thing, or we've got some steps in the right direction figured out. Yeah, he was kind of quiet, taken aback for a second, and just as much as I'm sure it meant the world for him to be able to tell the family those results. When you put your heart into an investigation like that, it means a ton to you.
And I went into the captain's office, and Chief was sitting there, and I had a piece of paper. I said, I think I have Princess Blue identified. And they were talking about stuff, and they just stopped. And I'm like, I got to go. And the captain looked at the chief, said, he's excited.
And Meshel was. But as the detective prepared to call Danny and give him the news, Meshel knew that conversation would be one of the toughest in his 13-year career.
What did you think when you heard that?
To be honest, the first thing I thought was, there's got to be a mistake. It can't be my sister. It can't be Julie.
Why?
And because, man, you don't want to sit and think, well, man, your sister's dead after all this time. You've been looking for her, and to no avail. And honestly, I still didn't believe it until I seen my mama's jewelry that they had. Because I remember the rings that my mama had, that she gave them to Julie that day, which was the last time my mama seen her. My mama gave my sister some of her rings.
Strange how life is. Princess Blue had been in the news in nearby Houston for years, but Danny had never seen the sketches, the ring, the pearl bracelet on TV.
You had never heard of her. You had no idea about the case.
No, ma'am. Not until that Texas Ranger told me about it. Other than that, I've never heard of her.
Meanwhile, you're here living life in Orange, Texas. She had already been found a few hours away. How do you wrap your mind around that?
I can't. For almost 30 years, she's been gone. It's hard today it's still hard to see that my sister's gone. I know it to be a fact now, but it still hurts. I still miss her. I still talk to her, though I know she can't hear me, but it makes me feel better.
What do you say to her?
What happened? Why did you leave and not come home? Did you die under circumstances that you had no control over? Was your life taken from you?
There was one person who might have known something. Remember the man Julie brought to the Orange House Hotel the last time Danny saw his sister? The one with the brown hair and thick beard. Her common-law husband. Where was he? And if he and Julie were living in New Orleans, why did her body end up on the side of the road in Texas? What about that blue sapphire class ring? It was the only piece of jewelry Julie's brothers and sisters didn't recognize. Was it his? Now that Princess Blue had a name and a face, investigators had a new mystery. Who could have killed her? The baseball field in front of the house where Julie and Danny grew up is still there. Danny's earliest memory of his sister is on that field.
She liked to play ball. She could run like a deer.
But the memories are fading. Dates and faces and names disappear with each season, which makes solving Julie's murder tougher and tougher. Figuring out how Julie ended up dead means going back to the beginning. Julie was born on October 21st, 1968 in Orange. Danny says she started running away around age 13. That puts us at 1981. By 1985, he thinks she was living in New Orleans. That year or the next was the last time Danny saw her back in Texas, and she brought her new husband. On September 10th, 1990, her bones were found on the side of the road, a month before her 21st birthday. The problem with these dates are they're hazy, and police can't find a record of Julie.
I can't get any subpoenas or search warrants with the information I have because it's not enough. I've done some simple searches with just her name and stuff like that through all the states surrounding us. Nothing come back.
I mean, that house is the same house that was.
When Danny hadn't heard from Julie a few years after seeing her at the Orange House Hotel, he hitchhiked to New Orleans to try to find her himself.
I walked the streets for a couple of weeks, looking for my sister, asking people that you could see on the streets every day. You knew they were street people.
I mean, did you show people a picture of Julie?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said, "This is my sister. Have y'all seen her? She's missing. We haven't seen her in years." And they'd look at the picture, "No, man, I'm sorry, I haven't seen her." And that's all I ever got was, "No, I haven't seen her."
It's been said that people go to New Orleans to disappear. A city of secrets, of dark alleys and dark stories. Right now, there are 416 missing persons cases open in Louisiana that go back to the 50s. Keep in mind, that's just the number of documented missing persons. There are no doubt many, many more. New Orleans police told us they have no record of Julie ever reported missing.
There's literally no trace of Julie in this city. I've spent months trying to find some kind of record of her. No address, no bills, not a marriage license, nothing. Police in Texas and Louisiana have all run her name to see if she possibly could have been picked up. Nothing.
Julie's family insists she did get married. Texas recognizes common law marriage, which means if they married there, they wouldn't have had to file any paperwork, just live together and agree to be married. None of her brothers or sisters remember her husband's name.
Oh, I would love to meet him and ask him, why didn't you ever report her missing? If you were her husband and she disappeared, why didn't you go looking for her?
How do you deal with the fact that you might not have answers to any of these questions?
It's hard because I'll probably never get answers to these questions. And I've come to terms with that.
Do you think valuable time was lost?
Yeah, I do. Yes, ma'am, I do. I think valuable time was lost. I think the wrong questions were asked. And I tend to wonder if any questions were asked, once they found her remains.
At this point, I think unless someone comes out and says, I have something to tell you about this, it's going to be tough. I mean, because the time that it's been already, 30 years is a long time for anything to sit. The DNA, they can't prove any more than what they've done with the DNA. So from here out, it's just, unless we find somebody that says they did it or they know something about it.
Last year, Detective Anthony Meschel gave Julie's bones to her family, and the rings, and the pearl bracelet. There were a lot of tears, even more questions, hopeless grief, disbelief.
The bracelet and the other ring she had was not going to help us solve a murder. They weren't going to help us catch who did it. They weren't going to explain how anything happened. So, and it was something for them to, a personal item of Julie's for them to have and keep for themselves. I think it was a good thing that we let them have them.
As for the ring that made Julie Princess Blue, Meschel's holding on to that because her killer is still out there.
It stays close to me, as you see. So there's always that thing in the back of your mind, saying, you know, you're never going to solve this case. But there's always that one little piece that was like, well, what if? What if this happened? What if somebody was to see her and say, I remember her?
The answers that we still need, we're still seeking, and we're not going to give up on that. We're going to do everything within our power to do. Any new advancements that come along, we'll seek out those as options as well. This case is not over for us.
I hope somebody sees it and knows something and speaks up.
Someone does know something.
Yeah, somebody does, and I hope they have the nerve and the courage to speak up about it. I don't have high hopes of it, though, to be honest with you. I just want to know why it happened. How did it happen? How did she get where she was at? And how come it took me 30-something years to find her, you know?
New Orleans is the last place Julie's family knew her to be. Years after Danny said goodbye to his sister at that hotel in Texas, they got a letter in Orange from Julie to their aunt. There was no return address, and that letter was long gone by now.
New Orleans is 370 miles from where Julie's bones were found. As Danny says, how did she get there and why? We may never know. But we do know Julie isn't still out there. Her family has her back. There are still more than 40,000 families that don't have that kind of closure. 40,000 unidentified bodies are in evidence rooms or medical examiners' offices across the country right now. 40,000 people whose bodies or bones have been found, but no one has claimed them. And every year, another 4,400 unknown people are found. 1,000 of them stay unidentified after year one. The murdered, the missing. The longer they stay nameless, the easier it is to forget them. Who's pushing for their cases to get solved?
If you're looking for someone, don't give up. Go to your local police station. Ask how to submit your DNA. That's what investigators suggest. Someone could be looking for you as hard as you're looking for them. I'm Courtney Fisher. This is Unsolved.